is coated, the catalyst could be platinum or bimetallic catalyst like platinum ruthenium alloy, and on top of that gas diffusion layer is placed, which could be a porous carbon paper. On top of that you have gasket. On top of that we keep bipolar plate, which is made of graphite. You can see flow field. This is like something flow field. You can see the curves, which are actually engraved onto the graphite plate of finite thickness, just to ensure the flow of gases to be proper. So, and finally, you have anode end plate. This is a typical proton exchange membrane fuel cell. If you want more output, say for example a single cell can result in 0.9 volt. So, if you want to go for 10 volt, you can add many cells in series and try to get the required output. But the point what I want to highlight over here, conventionally graphite plate is used as a bipolar plate, because the same graphite plate can be used as it will be in contact with cathode of one cell and anode of other cell. So, this graphite plate which collects, which should be highly conducting. We all know that graphite is a semi-metal which exhibits an electrical conductivity of the order of 10 power 4 Siemens per centimeter. It is used for collecting electrons, and the electrons will go to the external circuit, whereby we constantly derive power so long as we pass hydrogen in the anode and oxygen at the cathode, and this is the electrochemical reaction where we get water to be the output. So, this is something like the alternate energy technology which is currently being focused. So, now the question is that making this flow field onto graphite is a bit difficult, because graphite is brittle. So, it adds a cost of the entire fuel cell. Of course, one can think of metals. Metals by default the density is more, and also in this operating condition PEM fuel cell operates at around 80 degrees C. There is a possibility of getting corroded, because we will be using Nafion membrane predominantly in proton exchange membrane fuel cells. Not only that, recently like sulfuric acid doped polybenzimidazole membranes are being used. So, depending upon the nature of the membrane, there could be possibility of corrosion when we use metallic bipolar plates. So, typically how this is how cell looks like. This is the typical bipolar plate which has been made from polymer composite, I would say. You can see this is an injection molded plate, because injection molding is an easy process where one can get more number of products once the process optimization has been done. You can see the flow fields of particular depth have been very clearly engraved onto the bipolar plate. So, these are just the requirements of a bipolar plate. What I would like to emphasize more is that, apart from the fact that whether it is a metal or it is a graphite semi-metal which are used as bipolar plate, they are essential to distribute the fuel, and they carry electrons to the external circuits, and they are used to have connection between different cells when you go for series of more cells. So, typically any material which could be used as a bipolar plate should exhibit minimum of 20 Siemens per centimeter as suggested by US DOE, and chemically inert, lightweight, easily manufacturable using mass production techniques, non-permeability of reacting gases, etc. So, of course, these are the properties of graphite which I have already discussed. So, out of graphite as well as stainless steel, these two candidates have their own limitations. So, there is a necessity to go for alternate material which can which can overcome the difficulties of what could be realized in these materials. So, the solution could be polymer composites. So the conducting polymer composites bridge the gap. So it is essential and customary for us to understand how the electrical conductivity varies in conducting polymer composites. So this slide gives you information about the variation of electrical conductivity. On the y-axis, log sigma is plotted, and x-axis concentration of filler, phi is the concentration of filler, which could be anything. You can think of any conducting filler, maybe like nickel, iron flakes. You can think of graphite. You can think of carbon nanotubes. Any conducting filler could be added. But the point what I would like to emphasize over here is that the linear variation of electrical conductivity is what is predicted by simple rule of mixtures. But in composite system, the electrical conductivity varies non-linearly, which is in fact I would say advantageous for us, because to go for to realize this much level of conductivity, I need to go up to this concentration when I go for if the electrical conductivity variation follows simple rule of mixtures. But when the conductivity varies non-linearly at a particular composition, say phi c, which is regarded as percolation threshold or critical concentration, at which the electrical conductivity shoots up to many order, and this window, and then it gets saturated. The concentration at which the electrical conductivity starts to shoots up and gets saturated, that window is very narrow. So eventually we attain this level of conductivity at lower concentration of fillers. So this is an advantage when you go for polymer composite systems. But now the reason is that this phi c should be made as minimum as possible, as otherwise the flow properties of polymers would be affected to a greatest extent, and we cannot go for making product out of this composite system. Say for example, if we go for injection molding, suppose you have a filler concentration greater than 70% or 50%, it's very difficult for the viscosity of composite system increases dramatically, and what can happen is that if you keep on increasing the temperature, it may eventually result in degradation of polymers, so which will not suffice our purpose. So it is customary for us to reduce the phi c as much as possible. In this regard, instead of conventional micron fillers, one can think of nano fillers such as carbon nanotubes, rather high aspect ratio fillers, I would say graphene or carbon nanofibers, etc. So this is what is happening inside the system. If you see that the electrical conductivity variation in binary composites can be visualized into three parts. One is like insulating regime, and then this is semiconducting regime, and this is the completely conducting regime. You see that in insulating area there is no contact between the filler particles, because filler particles are electrically conducting, matrix is not a conductor. So eventually that results in the conductivity of insulating range. Once a finite less number of contacts are established, then the electrical conductivity shoots up, and finally in the saturation region enough contacts have already been made with the filler particles, so hence it results in saturation in the conductivity. Now the question one can ask is that it's simply a mixture of filler into polymer matrix. So instead of graphite or carbon nanotubes, if you add graphene into it, so will it result in the same level of electrical conductivity? No. The electrical percolation threshold will also be totally different, right? On the other hand, polymer characteristics also play a dominant role in deciding the electrical percolation threshold. To say the crystallinity of polymer is a critical factor which could have a profound influence on the electrical percolation threshold. So our task is to, as I told you, to reduce the electrical percolation threshold as much as possible. The critical volume loading to induce electrical conductivity in a composite system depends on shape of the filler. So if you add spherical shape, if you go for flakes, there will be difference in phi c, and particle size distribution, we require like narrow particle size distribution, and aspect ratio. Of course, as I told you, if you go for one dimensional fillers like carbon nanotubes, percolation threshold can be reduced to a greater extent. This four type of configuration could be thought of accordingly, name has been, accordingly the system has been named. In the first case, you can think of like, the filler particles are uniformly distributed. This is like ideal case. There is no contact between the fillers and hence the resultant system acts as an insulator. But here you see that there is a conducting channel formed by the fillers, and this particular configuration could be said as uniform channel model. This will start conducting. There could be cases where conducting channels are interrupted by insulators, such as even it could be a polymer base itself, so that the electrical conduction could be affected to a greater extent. Fourth one is that depending upon the thickness, here in third case you can have like different types of conduction phenomenon. I would say Schottky or space charge limited conduction or Poole-Frenkel mechanism can operate. In fourth case, you can have conducting channels are interrupted by barrier whose thickness is very less. When it is lesser than 50 angstrom, one can think of electrical conductivity in that system, which can predominantly happen through tunneling mechanism. So here what I would like to say is that physics also plays a dominant role in selection of understanding the basic aspects of material when we try to develop a product out of this. It will be more clear when we just try to take the subject further. So I would say I want to make a product, say for example bipolar plate or EMI shielding devices. So what should I look for? What should be the requirements of conducting polymer compound? Number one, it should be it should exhibit low percolation threshold, and it should have very good flow properties. MFI, which means that melt flow index, which should be greater than 3, which means grams extruded under proper condition. Grams extruded per 10 minutes when you have a standard load applied, and the material should be stable at high temperature, and it should have dimensional stability and tolerance, and finally cost should be low. That's why we try to go for polymer composite system. So polymers, as I told you, in many ways it can be classified, but broadly on the basis of processing we can say polymers could be classified into thermoplastics and thermosets, out of which thermosets can be easily reshaped, and hence we will fix a particular thermoplastic such as polypropylene. I just would like to take a model system as to how to go for making a material for a particular application. So we just try to concentrate on polypropylene and expanded graphite composite system, and how the DC and AC conductivity varies, and how the processing routes affects when you make the composites in different routes, how the electrical conductivity is getting affected. Is there any new phenomenon which could be thought of in this system? With supporting evidence, I would like to highlight, and finally we conclude. So as I told you, polypropylene is a thermoplastic, which is a semi-crystalline polymers. We know that most of the polymers, either it exists in amorphous state or semi-crystalline state. So polypropylene is a semi-crystalline polymer with glass transition temperature, especially isotactic polypropylene exhibits -10 degrees C. So under room temperature, it will behave as a viscoelastic material, so it's very difficult to make powder out of that. So polypropylene exists in different phases. One is like alpha phase, which is a monoclinic phase, beta phase is the hexagonal phase, and gamma form is orthorhombic phase. Alpha phase is the most predominant phase. As I told you, just I am interested to make polypropylene expanded graphite composites where polypropylene should be made as a powder, and just you mix the powder with the filler expanded graphite. So for that, PP should be made as a powder, because in alpha phase it exists as a granule, which will not be easy to grind and make powder out of it. So what we do is that we use a special process, like you just dissolve the granules in xylene at 140 degree and cool it, it forms a gel, and you just you precipitate it in acetone with vigorous stirring, and you get a powder, white powder, which is a PP powder, and it should be vacuum dried. This is graphite because expanded graphite is derived from graphite, so it's better to concentrate bit on graphite before we get into expanded graphite. Graphite crystal structure is hexagonal. You can have, like, graphite sheets. They exhibit like the carbon atoms are sp2 hybridized, and these graphite sheets held together by van der Waals force. In fact, pi interaction is also more. That's why they form easily agglomeration, and they also exhibit a gallery space. So this gallery space is very, very useful for us if it can be intelligent, if it can be used in a proper way. And also one should look at the interplanar spacing, d-spacing between graphite plate is 3.35 angstrom. So it is possible for us to make the foreign species to enter into the graphite space, gallery space, or into the interplanar space, depending upon the size of the foreign species. So expanded graphite is a form of graphite. When you take a flake graphite, natural graphite, and you just stir it with concentrated sulfuric acid and nitric acid in a volume ratio of 4:1. So sulfuric acid intercalates, and hence the graphitic planes are expanded. Rather, it forms intercalated structure. This is what is known as intercalated structure. You can see from here, graphite layers are very compactly spaced. You can see the loose structure. The spacing is bit increased. When you microwave irradiate or heat it at high temperature, what happens? The sulfuric acid bursts. In that process, the planes are shattered altogether. So now the original flake graphite has been made into worm-like structure because of this bursting process, whereby you get more fluffy expanded graphite. This is the scanning electron microscope of expanded graphite, which shows typically micron sized pores. So this is pretty helpful for us because, as I told you before, that we are interested to reduce the electrical percolation threshold. So one can easily form nanosheets by ultrasonicating this expanded graphite. So this is the typical electrical conductivity variation which has been measured with PP. In PP, when you vary the concentration of expanded graphite from 2, 4, 6, 8 like that, so what happens is that the expanded graphite is first sonicated in 100 ml of acetone and then mixed with PP and dried, and you powder mix it and make pellets and try to measure the resistance, calculate the electrical conductivity, and you get the nonlinear variation. So this shows bit of anisotropy in plane and through plane. PDR represents perpendicular, which means through thickness electrical conductivity, and PLL refers to in plane electrical conductivity. So there is an anisotropy in the insulating range, but if we go towards semiconducting or highly conducting state, because already contacts would have been established in three-dimensional ways, so you don't find much anisotropy between parallel or through thickness conductivity. So here in PP, we realize that 4% of expanded graphite is required minimum to start the electrical conductivity to slightly go up, or I would say slightly greater than 4%. This is because 4% is less compared to the micron size of the graphite. I have just given it for comparison. You see that 5 micron graphite particles are added into the same PP matrix, and you make the composite in exactly the similar fashion, and you make pellets and try to measure the electrical resistance. You see that electrical percolation, it is greater than 10%. So what we can understand from these two plots is that it is because of the formation of graphite nanosheets, which will be proved eventually in further slides, the electrical percolation is reduced to a greater extent. This is like impedance behavior of the composite system. Specifically, I am showing like 6.8% expanded graphite added to PP, 6.28% expanded graphite added to PP. So impedance is nothing but the, in short term I can say it's AC resistance of a system. It is an AC resistance, I would say. So what happens is that the electrical, you see that the real part of impedance and imaginary part of impedance is plotted, and you can see the diameter of the semicircle. It results in semicircle. The diameter of the semicircle represents the DC resistance of your sample. When you have higher loading, the resistance, the diameter becomes less. You can see the value over here. And what for it is used, we know the same result from DC conductivity, but additionally this gives you interfacial capacitance details for us. This is the typical equivalent circuit model of conducting polymer composites, where you have CPCs can be modeled as parallel combinations